Good morning. Welcome to iteach Live, our daily web series in which we are just engaging with teachers and administrators to talk about the teaching profession and individuals' perspective and just experience inside the classroom and now with this pandemic outside the classroom. And this morning, I had the privilege to talk to Jay Hauser. How are you doing this morning, Jay?
I'm doing great, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to sit and have a conversation about teaching. And I definitely want to get into, you're also a coach as well. So I think we'll hit on both those topics this morning. But before we dive into your classroom experience and things that are going on with COVID-19, I just want to hear a little bit about your background. How did you get to teaching?
Well, I just felt it was a calling. I was in sales for many years, and it wasn't as fulfilling as I hoped it would be. Was very successful in the pharmaceutical world. But when Denton Calvary really got going, I started volunteering there and got involved with the sports and volunteering for just about everything, from keeping the clock at basketball games to taping ankles for the football team. And so I just have to say, God just took me on a journey. I don't mind saying that, toward teaching that led me to be at Denton Calvary for a while, and then I got into public school, and so I've been at Crownover for the last 6 years.
Man, that's fantastic. There's, the majority of our teacher candidates through iteach are actually career changers. We have more individuals who later in life have a similar story to you, that they were working out in the field and industry, and then found that although sometimes more lucrative financially, it just wasn't as much as fulfilling as you just said as teaching can be. And so I hear your story or similar stories a lot, and it certainly resonates to other individuals. And I hope people listening to the stream who might be thinking about teaching can hear that a transition is possible, especially from a great position in medical sales into teaching. So I think that is a good takeaway right off the bat, that it's possible to make that transition.
Yeah, I mean, I can't thank iteach enough. I know a relative of yours that works there that made me very comfortable with a transition, because it was hard, being 52 years old and starting over.
Sure.
Basically, because the one thing about private school that was appealing, even though the pay is significantly lower, is you don't have to be certified. But
yeah,
to go through all that process was, iteach made it really easy for me. I mean, it wasn't an easy program, but everything was so organized, and I had all the help I needed, and plus I had, just a great confidence in your family that it was high quality and great folks, and that's what it turned out to be. I mean, I passed the PPR with flying colors, and that was something that, was on the very on the forefront of the first year teacher's mind.
Yeah.
But I'm so thankful for, people like Martha Evans and Jason Rainey and people at Denton ISD for giving me a shot, because I actually started off as a long-term sub.
Okay.
And then went from long-term sub to a para. And then once I got certified with you guys, passed the SPED test, and you guys prepared me well for what was coming. And I thought the material was very appropriate and very fair, if you will, because it's some work.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a great program.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, and it's interesting that just to lay out your kind of how the transition happened for you. That's the exact same thing that happened to my dad. My dad was actually in construction sales, and when he left that field, he was started long-term subbing, became a para, was certified, and then got into the classroom. So the exact same transition that you just spoke of, I saw my dad actually walk through that exact same
Really
pathway. I'm curious. You mentioned that you found that sales wasn't necessarily fulfilling. Was there an epiphany, or what was the actual kind of markers in your life and in your world for you to come to the conclusion, I'm going to actually make this change? You had to make that decision, right? To turn. Was there anything leading up that made you just have a click or an epiphany towards that?
Well, there's a lot to the story, that's personal, but basically, God blessed me with a pharmaceutical job right out of college, and it's all I ever knew. And so, right at 40, um, I guess, there was a couple of epiphany days. A couple of times I woke up, I was blessed to be promoted to a manager, so I was flying all over the country. And there was a couple of days, I woke up and I had those classic stories of I didn't know what city I was in.
Mm,
I was like, okay, where am I at? And I was missing my family, and it was before 9/11, but the travel got to be really, um, I don't know, taxing, if you will,
sure.
on me personally. That's just A and B and C of the whole
Yeah.
alphabet of it. But I think another epiphany day is I just kept living by reports. I don't know if your dad was like this, but it's like, okay, you're a hero one month, and then you're on the verge of being let go the next month because your
Right.
numbers are down, and there's so many people you have to depend on to make your numbers and things like that. And I got tired of being a number.
Right.
But what I love about teaching is, as long as I get up and take care of myself, and being a coach, and I work with an amazing coach, Martha Evans over at Crownover. She challenges us to be the best we can be, and so spiritually, physically, mentally. So as long as I get up, Andrew, and work hard, then I've got a job. So I don't know if that's a complete answer, but I didn't like the fact that you were always on edge,
Yeah.
even though the money was unbelievable. But we used to call it the golden handcuffs. It's like, okay, you've got it, but you're also just married to that company. So
Yeah, and I think that makes complete sense. I appreciate you providing some insight into that personal story of yours. And I think the rationale for becoming a teacher is so widespread. I think my hope is that everyone who chooses the teaching profession chooses it, and I know you did the same because you have a passion for youth and cultivating the next generation. But beyond that, practically, teaching is a really stable position, and you kind of get out of it what you put into it. And so your direct impact of how much effort you put forth can be seen in the kids and in your colleagues. And not to mention there's TRS benefits in Texas and
right.
summers. I mean, there's some pragmatic benefits to teaching apart from maybe the emotional satisfaction of impacting the next generation. So
Well, I think another thing, Andrew, is, and I thank God for this, but it's a career that age is not looked at as a negative.
sure.
I'm in the highly competitive pharmaceutical world. When you're 45, you're like, oh, you're old. It's like the NFL. It's like we got to get somebody young and nicer looking and all that. But this is one profession where they appreciate experience and appreciate the wisdom you can bring. And of course, you got to take care of yourself, but definitely it's looked at on as an asset, because again, changing careers, and anybody out there is doing it, changing careers at 52 years old was very scary for me. But these guys at iteach made the program very doable and very laid out and very organized. And there was so much support if I needed to talk to somebody, because it's like, okay, I hadn't done this in a while. But it was wonderful, and I can't thank you guys enough for helping me bridge the gap. Because again, going from private school to public, all the certifications you have to have, it looks like a mountain that's too high to climb, but it's
Yeah.
not. It's not. Just got to take it one step at a time.
Oh, for sure. You mentioned the experience as an asset in education, and I completely agree. I remember as a student, when a teacher is able to relate theory to the outside world and not make it as based on theory, but rather take their experience and say, this is how this applies to the real world. It makes the lesson more concrete, and it brings those things kind of to life. And I think age, in a very unique way, because of the experience in industry, provides teachers that ability to do so, where younger teachers just might not have that privilege. That's not to say there's not benefits to youthfulness in the classroom, but I certainly agree with you that experience coming into the classroom is greatly appreciated. I'm curious though, as you said that, my mind kind of started thinking about what challenges that can also present. So how have you overcome the challenges of, you teach middle school, and so you have younger kids, and I think your experience is certainly relatable and able to be into the classroom. Do you find any challenges trying to relate on their level with the I don't even know, the technologies and social medias and all those things that they're
Right.
using? But I'm curious about how you ensure that experience that you bring in the classroom, which is invaluable, is actually translated to a sixth grader and a seventh grade kind of mind. How do you do that?
Well, that's a great question. A lot of it is, I can just speak for Crown Over because by God's grace, that's the only school I've been at. But we're a bunch of big kids, with degrees, and we love kids. And it's easy for us to relate because we still remember being that age. And we also talk about all the time just how vulnerable that age is and what a life-shaping age that is. So
Right.
it's an extreme privilege to be working with those kids. Now, as far as the technology, that's a detriment in a lot of ways. As far as them personally, as district policy, we can't get involved with them as far as, Instagram or
Sure.
TikTok or
Sure.
all that stuff we're doing. It's just a safe place to be to not get involved with that. Or, I would never even give a kid my cell phone number.
Right.
But technology has changed the game. I don't know when you were in school, but everybody has a phone now, and it's a constant challenge to, okay, you got to keep that in your locker and that kind of thing. But as far as relating to them, I think it just goes back to, and I thank God for this, just all the training I had in sales and things like that to find commonalities with the kid and be empathetic, and so many stories, so many what people look at that might be, oh, that kid's got it made. No, he doesn't. This kid's falling apart. His parents just divorced and nobody knows it, or, that kind of thing. So I think a lot of it is getting with the kid and getting to know them, and just have some genuine, care for each student is how I relate.
Yeah, I think that's the cornerstone for relations to begin with, right? You have to have care. And in fact, the past couple of days, I've been talking to other teachers during this iteach Live. One of the prevailing themes, it plays out in different ways, but the prevailing theme is that teachers care. And it
Right.
seems to be the basis of student empowerment and student engagement and a lot of things that we're talking about from an outcome perspective. It certainly begins with just a baseline care for students. And you said it yourself just now, that that's kind of where it begins. And I think from that basis, if you believe that your students can learn and you care about them, a lot of the other things kind of will fall in place as you go through. And I want to talk about that care as it relates to distance learning in a little bit. But before I get to that, I want to talk about, you're in special education, correct?
Sure.
So for individuals that might not know about special ed, you're a special ed inclusion teacher. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What does inclusion mean? I know we have special ed resource, we have special ed inclusion. Maybe for individuals who don't even know, who are thinking, I don't even know what special ed inclusion is or what a
Sure.
special ed teacher does. Can you just let us know what special ed inclusion is?
Yeah, I mean, I can't get into a lot of it, but basically, sure, Andrew. So what I do is I go into a class and I support kids that have learning disabilities. I'm not the teacher of record. I don't do the lesson plans, but I am to communicate with that teacher and to know what's going on, of course. And usually we specialize at my school for English or math. And so I go in, and the kids have an IEP, which is an individualized education plan, and they have minutes that are to be served in each class period. So let's say if it was your son, I would go in there and say, hey, how's it going? Or sit by him, or sit and take notes with them and, hey, did you understand this? But a lot of it is just encouragement, which I love to do. And then maybe some reteach later, one-on-one, or instead tutoring after school or things like that. But a lot of these kids just need a little hand-holding because they don't read as fast as the other kids, or they don't get it right away. It takes a lot of repeated review for them, and it's hard for them because you got it right away, but he didn't, that kind of thing. So there's another model of co-teach, which is I teach, 20 minutes and somebody else teaches 20 minutes, but we're not currently doing that at our school. But inclusion is, I'd like to say, it looks like we're just in there helping out, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Oh, sure.
We're to make sure that the kids are learning, and some of these kids don't. A lot of it, Andrew, goes back to reading and reading levels and understanding. Everything is comprehension. So
right.
You may read something out loud to me, but you have no idea what you're reading. And so that's what a lot I do is I was like, do you understand? What does that word mean? Oh, I have no idea. But you said it perfectly, but you have no idea what it means.
Yeah.
So that's what I do, because your son's over there and he's already on chapter 4 and we're still at chapter 1.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's certainly great work. And I looked at your schedule on the Denton ISD website, and I noted that you have after hours tutoring. So your job is not necessarily confined to the workday as you try to, again, that care come into place to the reteach or supplemental learning that you can provide to your students, which I think is just fantastic. As an inclusion teacher, do you follow one student throughout his or her day, or do you have certain classes that you specialize in, or how does your schedule work in terms of how many students will be under your guidance in a given semester?
Right. So we are designated what we call case managers. So let's say if there's 50 students at our school and there's 5 of us, then I'll get 10 kids and I will work with them as much as possible. And sometimes the schedules all don't work out.
Right.
I'm still responsible for them. So if I'm not with your son in math, then I talk to whoever's with him in math, and then we collaborate and that kind of thing. So there's a responsibility called case management. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it definitely did. It's I'm not a special ed teacher by any means, and I know people listening might not be familiar, but I do know that every year, year over year, the high needs areas across the state and even the nation is really secondary math and science and special ed. It just seems to be an ongoing need to support kids that, like you said, that just might need a little extra support to make it click. And so for anyone maybe listening or thinking about the teaching profession, I want them to kind of hear from you. And I think you're super helpful to provide what an inclusion teacher looks like from a special ed perspective, to kind of gain some context of if they're kind of thinking of what content area to get into. Special ed is generally a lower barrier to enter the teaching profession, and it is oftentimes the most rewarding position for teachers. So I hope that.
So. I mean, definitely, Andrew. It's the kids that. If you love to be an encourager, if you're empathetic, that kind of person, then this is for you. Now, why is special ed hard, or why are there always spots? Is because there's a lot of paperwork. If I have 10 kids, then I have to have 10 meetings a year that are, legal meetings, and I'll meet with the parents and all the administration, and we'll say, okay, what does he need to be successful for next year? And there's a lot of thought and a lot of paperwork that goes into that process. But on the other hand, we're not really doing lesson plans. We don't have to enter grades. There's a trade-off for sure. So it's just a matter of what you like to do. And so I work with some amazing teachers that have well thought out lesson plans, and it's just really a joy to be in their classroom every day. So I'm at 57, I'm going through middle school again.
Yeah.
But that's another part of it. You know, if you want to be a teacher, you got to still love to learn. I had the extreme privilege of working with Art Briles for 6 years at Baylor during his summer camps. And one of the things that he impressed on me was if you love to learn, you will never get bored. And, you know, as innovative and challenging as his offenses were, that's why, is they continued to love to learn. And he's got several coaches that are in the NCAA as head coaches, like Phil Montgomery at Tulsa, Dino Babers up at Syracuse, that were with him during that time. Great people.
Yeah.
So
So,
sidetrack, but
yeah, no worries. So you started at Calvary, which is a little charter school, or I don't know if it's a charter private school.
Private school, yes, sir.
Yeah, here in Denton, Texas, and you got to coach, and yeah, you got to be exposed to different subjects. What made you decide special ed when you thought, I'm going to go through the certification process and kind of the rigor of that, and you made the decision to pursue special ed as well as coach. What made you decide special ed?
Well, you know, that's a very tender answer for me, but I don't mind being transparent. I just have always, and I'm not trying to glorify myself, but I've always wanted to stand up for the kid that was maybe a little different, or just a little downtrodden. You know, I just love to encourage. So that's one of the things I love about coaching is, you know, it's so amazing when I coach 8th grade girls. So you see a girl get better just through encouragement and strategy. That is so wonderful. So the special ed kids, some of them are, a lot of them are children of divorce, and they don't know how to handle that, so they act out, and so they have emotional disturbance. And so I know how to deal with that, because that's been in my past. I was a child of divorce, so I just want to pay it forward and teach these kids how I made it through, and I think it was the most relatable field to me, because a lot of kids are troubled and they need help, and that always gets in the way of their academics. If they're not emotionally right and socially things aren't good at home, then they're going to struggle in school. So if I can help them get past that or get through that, then I've succeeded.
Well, it's a good work, and I appreciate the effort that you're putting forth every day. How does coaching and your job as a special ed teacher relate? Is there any things that you take from the classroom as you're academically coaching a student, and vice versa into 8th grade girls? How do those interplay, and how can they feed off each other?
Well, thank you. That's a great question. The coaching energizes me. The 8th grade girls, you know, they're so silly, and it's such a great age. But the great coaches will tell you, we're teachers. The great coaches are great teachers, and I'm not saying I am. I'm very proud of my little basketball team was undefeated last year, but it was the B team, but still, it meant a lot to us.
Sure.
And so, you know, what's relatable is, you know, I work with Martha Evans, and she's so motivating. And so coaching and teaching are so interchanged with, if you're a great explainer, great teacher, great motivator, then those are in sync all day, I believe. But the coaching part really energizes me, because the girls are just so are fun to be around, and, you know, high energy, and, you know, and you feed off of that as a coach.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think oftentimes when you're coaching, you're using some of the teaching practices to be a teacher while you coach. But then when you're in the classroom, you also bring in that coaching aspect. There's a great healthy mixture of content being taught while also encouraging the students. And those aren't ever mutually exclusive for one another. So the ability uniquely for coaches to have the ability to be in the classroom coaching, but on the field or on the court teaching is certainly a unique perspective that I think is valuable to the students.
Yeah. Well, it's really a privilege to be at Crownover because we got Charlene Parham, who's amazing, and we've had some incredible APs there as well. But going back to Coach Evans, we really make the kids, and this has transferred back into my special ed, is we'll make the kids be the teacher for a moment or two, or okay, all right, Andrew, you tell me what that play is and show me the movement on 4 out. And they'll be like, okay, well, if they don't know it, then I haven't taught it well enough.
Yeah.
But I went to Denton ISD provides us into some great professional development. And so I go to TIA every year. And one of the things that they impressed upon me was, or one of the greatest lessons I learned is that for them to be able to reteach it back to you, then they've got it.
Yeah.
So that's something that we always try to strive for at Crownover is the kids being able to, okay, I have an amazing teacher named Mr. Nance that does math, and so I'll just follow the kids along, and we'll do an around the room where they're working problems, and I'll say, okay, I'm the student today. You got to tell me how to do that. And they'll be, okay. Well, first off, you start with this, and then I know they've got it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And it's a great way to assess learning for sure, and empower students and that confidence that they know it. So I think it's duly powerful.
We just have a very high expectations at Crownover. So we want the kids to really progress and learn. So when they're able to reteach us, then they're doing something.
That's great, Jay. I know we're coming up against our allotted 30 minutes, but I wanted to talk just briefly about the uniqueness of where we're at now in terms of school shutdown and COVID-19 and all this pandemic. And we talked about the baseline of care being foundational to students. How are you currently expressing that care for your students, given that you don't have a classroom to be with them?
Right. Well, anybody watching that wants to be in special ed, a lot of it revolves around the parents. And so I would say, first of all, take care of yourself, get up, take a shower, go work out, do something, keep your routine as close to normal as possible. And then I'll get on the phone or email and talk to parents, and then they'll put me on the line with the kids, and it's just going back to sales. The more people you see, the more people you're going to sell probably, and then the people that are really good customers, you've got to touch base with them quite often and check with them, and I just see these kids not in a non-professional way, but just I kind of see them as my customers, and like, okay, I got to check on this guy today, and I got to check on this girl, and it's just not being overwhelmingly frequent, but once a week or twice a week, or however often, or just to say, hey, I'm here for you, let me know what you need, I will fit into your schedule. So it's all about being flexible, because we got extra time on our hands, and it's the craziest year ever for all of us. I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So just be flexible and be available.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that customer thing and bringing in your experience into this right now, because the reason you as a salesman would have reached out to customers is to maintain the relationship. You want to make sure that your customers know you're there, that if they need something, you're a support to them. Now, granted, in sales, you have some maybe ulterior motives for that. Sure. But it's still the same idea to maintain relationships. It's to let them know, your students, that you care, you are there, you haven't forgotten about them. And so I appreciate personally that you're doing that for your kids. And I'm sure the administration at Crownover and Denton ISD certainly appreciate their teachers, like you said, taking that little extra time you might have to get on the phone call. And man, I certainly hope that all your students are appreciative, and your parents as well, knowing that you're putting forth effort and you're not resting on your laurels in this awkward and crazy time.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we got great parents, and again, it goes back to relationships. I mean, I had a great relationship with someone in your family that led me to iteach, and so much of life is about relationships. And then going back to the core point of the message today is, the kids, if they know you really care about them, then they're going to listen to you.
Yeah.
But if you just get up there and bark at them and you're just trying to get the material out so that you can get on Amazon and buy something for yourself, you don't need to be a teacher. It's more of, you've got to spend the time to depend because they depend on you, and they need you more than they will tell you. I don't know if you can relate or go back to being an 8th grade boy, but you think you know everything, but you really don't.
Right.
And they need you, and the great thing is the most rewarding thing, Andrew, is when we go to see our kids at Geyer that were at Crownover, and they come up and just want to hug us, and oh my goodness, it makes it all worthwhile. And there's been girls that we were really hard on, and that I'm like, oh my gosh, that girl probably hates me because she was always talking in class, and I had to tell her to be quiet. Those kids are the ones that appreciate you the most. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. Jay, I certainly appreciate you taking half hour to talk to me, and my hope is that you've encouraged a lot of people that might be on the fence of a career change to think about teaching and even special ed, because we need great special ed teachers out there like you. And so thank you for your good work. And hopefully this fall it's back to normal and you're back at Crownover.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, only the good Lord knows. I don't know if we'll be wearing masks or being virtual for August, or we just don't know. But
sure.
I can say I can highly recommend you guys, because the program is very affordable, and you guys work things out for people starting out. There's some flexibility there, but it's just a well thought out program that takes you through everything that you need to know for getting that PPR test passed, and how to relate to kids, and how just kind of what to expect that first year.
Sure. Well, I'm glad you had a great experience. And Jay, I look forward to seeing you around town.
All right, bud.
Have a good one.
All right. Take care. Nice talking to you.
Pleasure.